متابعي موقع عرب لندن، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. وهذا هو بث مباشر من وسط مدينة لندن، حيث تنظم الجالية الفلسطينية فعالية لإحياء ذكرى النكبة الفلسطينية. وفي هذه الفعالية يتم عرض العديد من المنتجات أو التراثية واستعراض للثقافة الفلسطينية. كما نشاهد أثواب فلسطينية موجودة في المكان، وبعض المعالم أو بعض الرموز التراث الفلسطيني.
It doesn't work right now. But this is your number, yeah? Yeah, Rima. كيف حالك والله حقيقي.
بعدين اي سبب تسجل بالصوت ولا بس الصورة؟ الصوت.
The Palestinian catastrophe. Today we are very honored to welcome one of our most prominent Palestinian politicians in the last 40 years at least. I'm not showing that he is aging, but it is really what Dr. Mustafa is about, really his political efforts, his initiatives, being in a very leading position in the Palestinian political life in the last at least 35 years, heading the Palestinian National Initiative, putting a lot of efforts in promoting and advocating the Palestinian narrative, with a lot of efforts and practical achievements on the ground. We would like to welcome him and we would like to listen to what he's going to say about the Palestine now, between Nakba and genocide, and what we have to do as Palestinians in order to avoid or to prevent another Nakba. And I would like to give Dr. Mustafa the mic, where he can start to talk to our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. It's an honor to be with you and also with my friend and colleague, Afif Safi. So I greet you all from Palestine, and I hope that our discussion will be fruitful and useful today. I would like to start by saying that today we're very close to what was the 76th anniversary of the Nakba. Something that was very dramatic in the life of the Palestinian people, because it led to the expulsion and the displacement of no less than 70% of the Palestinian population. But not only that, the catastrophe in 1948 was associated with the Israeli Zionist establishment taking over most of the Palestinian land. While they were in control of no more than 3% of the land of historic Palestine, after 1948, they became in charge of practically 78%. And when Palestinians used to own more than 86% of the land of what became Israel, now they don't own more than 3.5%, which means they were all subjected to a systematic process of land theft and efforts to destroy their right for self-determination. But the Nakba was also associated with terrible massacres. Some of these massacres are well known, some others have not been reported well. But we are talking about the fact that Israeli military groups, or gangs, I should say, committed 70 massacres. And in the process of the eviction of Palestinian people, they ended up razing to the ground no less than 520 Palestinian communities, and forcing 70% of the population out of their land, who have become today more than 7 million refugees who are not allowed to come back home to the place where they or their ancestors have lived and were born. The attacks on Gaza that are taking place since the 7th of October, but not only the attacks in Gaza, actually the attacks that are also happening in the West Bank, all resemble, in my opinion, some kind of a repetition or an Israeli effort to repeat what happened in the 1948 catastrophe. I know that Israel had many goals in its attacks in Gaza, and they failed in achieving most of them, or all of them actually. But their main goal was to try to evict everybody in Gaza out of Gaza to Egypt, to conduct another ethnic cleansing, eliminating the presence of 2.3 million people from Gaza. This is very much related to the strategy of the Zionist movement, which encountered a situation before the 7th of October, where, regardless of the fact that they've managed to force 7 million Palestinians to be outside Palestine, our numbers on the land of historic Palestine in the West Bank and Gaza Strip was not only equal, but even a little bit more than the Israeli Jewish people. So the whole Zionist project, in their opinion, was threatened by the demographic presence of the Palestinian people, and especially that this demographic presence was not only a passive presence, it was an active presence with a lot of resistance to Israeli measures, including the Israeli law that was passed in 2018, which the state nationalization law, which determined that the right of self-determination in all of Palestine, in all of historic Palestine, should be exclusive to Jewish people. It was the ultimate consolidation of the system of apartheid. And as I usually say, the 7th of October was not the beginning of the story. What happened was only one day in a long history that goes for more than 100 years, where the Zionist establishment has been trying with settler colonial project to consolidate Israeli presence on the ground, try to evict Palestinians from their land, and transform the whole situation. If there is something important about what happened on the 7th of October, it is definitely the fact that it alerted so many people that thought that there was a chance for a compromise with the Zionist movement, a historical compromise that used to be called the two-state solution, or Oslo Agreement, if you want, that this was nothing but an illusion. If there is something important about what happened, it is that it reminded everybody that we, the Palestinian people, are still subjected to the same settler colonial project. A settler colonial project that started in the 19th century and that continued in the 20th century with the Nakba and with the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza in 1967. And that produced not only military occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, but also produced a system of apartheid that affected Palestinians, whether they lived in 1948 areas, or they lived in the West Bank and Gaza, or whether they were Palestinian refugees like many of you in this hall today, who are deprived from the right of return and the right to go back to their home. It's the same settler colonial project. And their effort to conduct ethnic cleansing one more time in Gaza was a reflection that the settler colonial project is not over. It is there, and it is still trying to and continuing to try to achieve the main Zionist goal, which is to evict all Palestinians from their land, from Palestine. The attacks, although are horrifying in Gaza, up till now, we're talking about the killing of no less than 46,000 Palestinian people, including 10,000 who are still missing under the rubble, and the injury of more than 82,000 people, which is about 5.5% of the population of Gaza. It's not just on that. They also destroyed more than 82% of all homes in Gaza, destroyed all universities, all hospitals, destroyed the basic medical facilities. Their goal is clearly genocide. And genocide is part of the ethnic cleansing efforts that they are doing. But it's not just Gaza, it's also the West Bank, where gangs of settlers who are equipped with military equipment by the Israeli government, who are led by Israeli official ministers like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, the fascists Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, are trying to also attack Palestinians everywhere in the West Bank and continue to evict them from their homeland. Up till now, no less than 35 Palestinian communities have been evicted by settler gangs who continue their attacks, and I'm sure you've heard how they tried 2 days ago to burn houses in places like Bitin and Burqa and Ramallah, and before that in Duma, and before that in Huwara, and so on and so forth. What I'm trying to say that what our people face in Gaza, regardless of the difference in the scale, of course, and what our people are facing in Jerusalem and in West Bank is the same settler colonial project. And that's why I believe that the whole Palestinian national movement should revise its program and its approach and its goals, and should not limit them to just saying we want to end occupation, because peace will not prevail in this land unless the settler colonial project itself is dismantled. As long as this settler colonial project continues, the risk of a second Nakba continues to be there, and they are not hiding their intentions. they're saying it very clearly that their goal was to evict people from Gaza. That's what Netanyahu himself said. That's what his military spokesperson said. And in Jerusalem just recently, they were talking clearly about ethnic cleansing of all Palestinians, and that the Aqsa Mosque is a Jewish place, etc., etc. In my opinion, the realization that what we face here is not just this part or that part of the settler colonial project, but the whole settler colonial system is very important for the strategic thinking of the Palestinian people. And let me say that maybe in the last years, two main illusions have vanished. And the Palestinian leaders should understand that very clearly. The first illusion is that it is absolutely incorrect to continue to build hopes in the so-called Oslo process and to continue to build hopes on negotiations with this Zionist establishment or hope for a compromise with them. And the second illusion that everybody should get rid of is that the United States of America can be a mediator in this situation or in resolving the situation. Yesterday, we saw how American official military associated with Israel in the attack on Nusayrat, which caused another terrible massacre, killing no less than 470 people and injuring more than 650 people. A terrible massacre, and they don't shy away from mentioning that they have participated in it. It wasn't only the American groups that participated, but also the British, who are using their planes around the clock over Gaza to collect military information and collect intelligence and to provide it to the Israeli army. In my opinion, if we realize and understand the kind and nature of the challenge we are facing today in Gaza and in the West Bank and in the whole of Palestine, we would come up with the understanding of what we should do to prevent yet another catastrophe. And in my opinion, we should adopt all a strategy that consists of 6 points or 6 pillars of struggle, as the people in South Africa used to say. The first one is the steadfastness of the people and staying on the land of Palestine. And if there is something that should be admired more than anything else today, it is the heroism of the people of Gaza, the heroism of the people of Jabalia, of Beit Lahia, of Gaza City itself, of the people in Khan Yunis and Rafah and Nusayrat, who remained on their land and refused and rejected all the pressure that was exercised on them, including killing their beloved ones, killing their children, killing their fathers, their mothers. Regardless of that, they stayed in Gaza, and that will cause the main failure of the Israeli aggression. But also it is the story of resilience and steadfastness that Palestinian people are showing in both West Bank and also in 1948 areas. Staying in Palestine, supporting the steadfastness and the resilience of the people is the most important first pillar of our struggle. The second one is resistance. We have the right to resist the oppression. We have the right to resist the occupation. We have the right to resist the settler colonial system in every possible way. International law says that those people who are oppressed and those who are under occupation have the right to resist the injustice in every possible way, including military ways. It's what international law says, as long as they respect international law and international humanitarian law. So resistance in all its forms is the second pillar. The third pillar is a very important one, is to enhance and increase the international solidarity with the Palestinian cause. And we've seen yesterday the wonderful demonstration in London. And we've seen these demonstrations take place all over Europe, all over the world. Yesterday, there was a massive demonstration in front of the White House in Washington, sending to Biden a very clear message that you've crossed the red line that you said you would put for Israel not to allow attacks on Rafah. So the international solidarity is very important, but the international solidarity and the work of Palestinian diaspora, people who are in the diaspora who are forced to be refugees, cannot be effective unless it is translated into an effective boycott, divestment, sanctions campaign, BDS. The more we have boycott, divestment, sanctions, the more material effect we will have on the balance of power, and the more you can help us in standing up to this terrible oppression and aggression we are subjected to. The fourth component is to re-emphasize one more time the unity of all the three components of the Palestinian people. The people who live in what is called Israel now, 1948 areas, the Palestinians who live in West Bank and Gaza Strip, in the occupied territories, as they are called, and the Palestinians who are living abroad, who are forced to be refugees. These three components should be part and parcel of not only the struggle of the Palestinian people, but also the leadership of the Palestinian people. And they should have a say, and they should participate in electing the structures that should be representing them. The fifth pillar, which I think is very, very important, is to establish Palestinian unity. And that is something that we are still missing. Yes, the people have shown a fantastic and wonderful example of unity in struggle against the occupation, unity in struggle against the aggression in Gaza. The people on the ground are unified and united. But what we need is that the political leaders of different groups and factions and parties rise up to the level of the unity that Palestinian people have shown in their struggle. And to be precise, I think what we need for our struggle to succeed is to have a unified Palestinian leadership immediately. And that can be achieved by targeting two goals. First of all, to have all the Palestinian political groups in one unified leadership. And second, to preserve the right of the Palestinian people to represent themselves and their case in a situation where so many parties are trying to take away our right of self-representation, which means protecting the role of the PLO. The PLO is not in good shape. The PLO, unfortunately, has been marginalized by the Palestinian Authority. What we need is to bring back the PLO to its major role as a leader of the Palestinian national struggle and as a representative of the Palestinian people. And that would mean bringing in all the parties that are still outside the PLO into the PLO and creating a truly unified and democratic leadership. A unified and effective and democratic leadership based on democratic participation and no monopoly for anybody. I think that's the first step that is needed immediately. The second step should be the creation of an interim unified national consensus government that could take immediately the responsibility of maintaining the unity between West Bank and Gaza, preventing the Israelis from fulfilling their goals of maintaining the Israeli occupation of Gaza and trying to create collaborative structures that would be working under the thumb and the control of the Israeli occupation. We need that kind of interim government, and I say interim because at the end should prepare the ground and give Palestinian people the right for free democratic elections to choose their leaders in a free democratic way. We were about to have a free democratic elections in 2021, and it was supposed to be the first step electing the part of the Palestinian National Council in the occupied territories, and then that should have been followed by another step of giving Palestinians in the diaspora the right to choose their representatives to the Palestinian National Council. We need this kind of process as soon as possible, but of course we do realize now that the main goal at this moment is to stop the war, to stop the terrible aggression of our people, and to save our people in Gaza from this terrible genocide that is conducted against them. The sixth pillar of our strategy should be to break into the ranks of our enemy, to penetrate the ranks of those who have been supporting Israel for a very long time. And let me tell you that during the last 245 days, what we see is a true miracle, a true change, complete change of the support of the international community to the Palestinian people. It is happening at the grassroots level, of course. It is happening at the level of the younger generation. But who would have imagined this huge shift in the younger generation in the United States? Who would have imagined that many Jewish groups will separate themselves from Zionism and from supporting Israel, becoming some of the most active groups supporting Palestinian struggle and Palestinian rights for freedom? This change is happening. And in my opinion, regardless of the grave and very huge amount of sacrifices we have made, and it is so painful. I cannot explain to you how painful it is to talk to our people in Gaza every day. We have now 45 medical teams working there, trying to help the people, treating about 200,000 people every month, providing medical care to people who have lost everything. Listening to them and listening to their pain is not an easy thing. But regardless of that, I would have to say that Israel has failed, and Netanyahu has failed. He has failed in achieving any of the four goals they have put for this war. They have failed in destroying Palestinian resistance. They have failed so far in imposing their military control over Gaza. They have failed dramatically in bringing back, regardless of the last operation yesterday when they managed to get 4 of the prisoners, but in general, they could not bring back the prisoners by military force. And in reality, if Netanyahu wants to proceed in the same manner, he will need approximately 20 years to go with massacres in each operation if he wants to follow the same path that he has used for the last 8 months. But the most important thing is that they have failed drastically in forcing the Palestinian people out of Gaza. They have failed drastically in achieving their main goal, which is, as I said, the ethnic cleansing of Palestinian people. And in all of that, I think that the perspective of our struggle are wide open, but we need now to be unified. We need unity and we need a very clear strategy. And most important, we need your support. I'm talking here not only to my Palestinian colleagues, but to all these wonderful and noble people who are participating day and night in different activities to support the steadfastness and the struggle of the Palestinian people. And I am 100% sure, regardless, as I said, of all the suffering, that we are on the right track. And that one day, we and you will celebrate together the freedom of Palestine. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Barghouti, for your powerful speech. And I am sure we can give one or two questions, if there is any, really to be asked before we let Dr. Mustafa just to go. Is, okay.
Hello. Do you think we'll see Palestine in our lifetime? I often get disheartened by everything that is happening. And now I feel like in my lifetime, I'm not going to see a free Palestine. Maybe my son would be lucky to see it, but sometimes I get a bit disheartened.
Thank you. Yes, you have a question saying, is Our Lady gonna to witness free Palestine in our lifetime, or she has to pass it on to her children?
The question is whether we will see free Palestine in our lifetime or pass it to our children. Is that the question?
Yes, yes.
No, in your lifetime, I'm sure. I don't know about my lifetime, but in your lifetime, for sure. You know, history moves very fast these days. And I think that the Israeli Zionist movement is in real trouble because they are really suffering from a deep crisis, mainly because they couldn't fulfill their goals. I mean, they couldn't achieve the main. If they had managed to force us all out of Palestine, maybe they would have succeeded. But I think the presence of the Palestinian people on their land is the most important factor that will guarantee a different future. Besides, of course, this huge international change in the whole world.
Okay, we have another question here, which would be the final, and then we will let you go, inshallah.
Thank you, Dr. Barghouti. It's an excellent analysis and optimism, and I hope we have it all. What I would like to comment is that two things. You mentioned that the killing of the freeing of the 4 hostages yesterday. We should publicize the cost. The cost of that was 18 Israeli soldiers have been killed to free these. We should emphasize. The other thing we need to publicize as much as we can. I'm not a fan of Hamas, but at the same time, I follow everything happening there. We need to publicize the change of the charter of Hamas so we can stand and say, because they are part of the community, whether we like it or not, and they have to be part of the solution or discussion. And if anything, let the Palestinian hold them to account in a way or another. That's up to Palestinians who are under the occupation. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. If you have any further comment, Dr. Barghouti.
I was talking, by the way, this morning to BBC TV, and it was really shocking to see that whenever I try to show a figure or something or tell some fact, they will immediately respond by saying, but the Israelis say this and that, and Israel says this and that. To the level that I eventually asked the anchor whether she was the spokesperson of the Israeli government. And you know, we are facing a very serious bias here. But as you said, it is important to show the price. But the price is not only on the Israeli side. I have to mention to you the last figures of the number of Palestinians that were slaughtered yesterday in this Israeli attack was 274 Palestinians, mostly children and women, and 698 injured people, almost 700. You're talking about almost 1,000 people that was killed or injured, to release these 4 prisoners who could have easily been released if there was an agreement with the Palestinian side to stop the war and to have a complete exchange of prisoners. What I also mentioned on the BBC was that Israelis themselves admitted that the persons, the Israeli 4 prisoners that they got back were in very good health condition. Actually, some of them gained weight while they were in prison. And they looked fine, and their health was fine, and nobody was needed to go to hospital. And I want everybody to compare that with what the Israelis are doing to our prisoners. Why they are talking all the time about 120 or 115 Israeli prisoners, and not a single word about the 14,500 Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails, some of whom have been in Israeli jails. One of them is a cousin of mine for 43 years. They don't say anything about the fact that these prisoners, the 14,500 prisoners, are subjected to terrible torture, to horrible conditions. They're deprived of food, deprived of medications, deprived of medical treatment. And because of that, and because of the torture, 52 Palestinian prisoners since the 7th of October were killed in Israeli prisons. That's not to mention the number of Palestinians that were executed on their way to the Israeli concentration camps or after they were released from the concentration camps. One of my colleagues, who's an ambulance driver, was arrested for 3 weeks in one of these concentration camps, and he told me how he was tortured, not only with beating, which broke one of his arms and caused many injuries, but also he told me how they used electrical shocks against them, how they tried to suffocate them under the water as a form of torture, reminding us of what was used in Guantanamo prison at one point of time. So in my opinion, yes, these things have to be emphasized. And I'm so glad that the social media and the younger generation, whether they are Palestinians, Arab, or internationals, have managed to break the walls of the mainstream media that continues shamelessly to be biased to the Israeli aggression.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barghouthi, and we would like really just to convey here our gratitude to your presence, to your time, to your advocate as well, and we wish you all the best, and inshallah, free Palestine.
Thank you.
Once again, we have someone, we called him, I think, with a very humble statement, Palestinian diplomat. This is all, I think it's unfair, because we are talking really about a Palestinian prominent diplomat with a very important history, to the extent that at least me and many I know, they consider him to be a diplomatic school of thought. And I think today we managed to get Afif Safi, which is one of the most important Palestinian diplomats in the last 40 years. We will get his view on the Palestinian cause between the Nakba and genocide. And I'm pretty sure you will hear something you never heard before, because we are talking about a history, we are talking about knowledge, and we are talking about one of the most intellectual Palestinian debates. I'll give you the mic, and I would like to start with you now. Thank you.
Dr. Nihan. I'm really delighted to see the reawakening of the Association of Palestinian Community in the UK. And allow me to start by mentioning that we are privileged today to have among us Vanessa Redgrave. Vanessa Redgrave, that both the world-famous author Tennessee Williams and the famous, world-famous actor, right-wing Charlton Heston, both said that she was the greatest actress on earth. I know that in the 21st century, there were a few films, Palestinian films, that were nominated for awards in the Oscars. And in the last Oscar ceremony, a Jewish filmmaker mentioned his sympathy and his empathy with the Palestinian people. Vanessa Redgrave spoke about Palestinians and Palestine in the ceremony of 1978, already last century. Dear friends, the playwright Bertolt Brecht, in his play on Galileo, has a profound scene where Galileo in the courtroom retracts on his scientific findings under the physical pressure of the Inquisition, physical pressure meaning torture. And in the room there was one of his disciples who looks at him with disgust and says, "Unhappy are the people who have no heroes." To which Galileo answers, "No, my friend, unhappy are the people who still have a need for heroes." I think we are here unanimous to believe that we, the Palestinian people, have still a need for heroes. And let me tell you, we are gathered here today to commemorate the Nakba, the ongoing process of the Nakba, and pay tribute and bow in respect to the collective hero, the Palestinian people. Yes, yes, we are exhausted, physically and psychologically. Yes, we are wounded. Yes, we are bleeding. Yet, we are unbroken, untamed, undomesticated, unbound, and undefeated. Friends, for 40 years, I kept saying, I do not belong to the optimistic school of thought that promises victory to the oppressed. I am against predetermination. History is always in the making, its destination unknown. And let me tell you, I always believed that the dilemma in the Middle East was either that there is a state missing or there is a people too many, this time we, the Palestinians. I believe the answer of the international community has been that there is a state missing, needing to be created. But I have news for you. History is still undecided. And our task, our challenge, Dr. Nihal, is how to help history make the right choice. Up to recently, because we have been the victims of European history, we did not get our legitimate share of sympathy, solidarity, and support. Many trivialized and banalized our suffering, which was hardly even recognized. Our victims, unmourned, looked as though they were nameless, faceless, motherless, fatherless, childless, worthless. But today, things are changing, and you have been one of the many vehicles of the change that is occurring. Political scientists, during the last 2 decades, have once announced the end of history, Fukuyama, or at other moments have announced the end of ideology. Well, today I'm proud to say that I am sure that at least we haven't witnessed the end of idealism. And I believe that the demonstrations of Washington, of London, from Belgium to Berkeley, that are occurring on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, are a proof that we haven't witnessed the end of ideology. My friends, there are promising signs around the world. And I believe one of those is the number of Jewish individuals boards and institutions that have been extremely assertive and vocal, saying, not in our name. And I have frequently repeated to Jewish audiences, including in synagogues, by saying if a Palestinian state is our right, it is the moral obligation, the ethical duty of Israeli Jews and Jewish communities around the world, because they, more than anybody else, know the human price, individual and collective, that we have had to pay for the birth of the Israeli state. So it's our right, it's their duty. Another encouraging phenomenon, dear friend, is the fact that today in Western countries, public opinion is by far more advanced than the official policies of their governments. And this will inevitably be translated in the political sphere and arena at one moment, hopefully very soon, if we act intelligently. And I personally believe that opinion polls conducted in the UK show that there is overwhelming sympathy towards the Palestinian aspiration and empathy for the Palestinian suffering of over 70% of public opinion, covering including those who vote for the Conservative Party. Now let me tell you, I personally believe that this is the first election in the UK where the Palestinian, the Arab, and the Muslim vote will be struggling to make itself heard and counted. And I welcome this phenomenon. Now let me tell you very frankly, we, the Palestinian community in the UK, do not have the critical mass to weigh decisively in any direction. The Arab community is much more sizable, but unfortunately, as you know, the Orient is disoriented, and that Arab community is as fragmented as the Arab world is. The Iraqis, big community, are in three, at least, divided. The Lebanese, between the government and the opposition, at least in two. The Lebanese, 17 denomination of different religious sects, etc., etc. But we, the Palestinians, can be the unifying factor and the inspiring actor. The Muslim community is our logical, sociological hinterland with whom we should make an alliance and an osmosis. I have said at the beginning of the crisis 8 months ago that in Western democracies there is what they call the pendulum phenomenon. And here in the UK, after 14 years of conservative government, with 5 successive uninspired and uninspiring prime ministers, the pendulum was inevitably going to go towards Labour, even if it is led by a very underwhelmingly charismatic leader, Keir Starmer. And I said some 8 months ago that our ideal scenario for us Palestinians, but also for democracy in the UK, is that Labour, who's going to be unavoidably the first party in the country, hopefully will not enjoy a numerical majority in parliament. Yeah. Unfortunately, we are witnessing the collapse of the Conservatives because of infighting and because of the competition of the Reform Party with Farage phenomenon, etc. It's unfortunate because I think it would have been healthier for British politics to have a more vibrant Conservative Party struggling to maintain as much of their presence in Parliament as possible. But many Palestinians, many Arab Britishers, and many Muslims will be rewarding those MPs who have voted in favor of ceasefire now, stop exporting arms, refund the UNRWA, etc., etc., and punishing those who have been cowardly, because Palestine has always been the test between courage, political courage, and moral cowardice. We have to reward those who stood by us in our moment of difficulty and pain, and to punish those who have been insensitive to our legitimate aspirations. And political observers will discover that many hundreds of thousands of additional votes will be pouring towards the Liberal Democrats and the Greens, and they will understand the significance and from where they are coming. But my hope, dear friends, is the following. We have to raise our voice, and this is why I'm happy that the Palestinian Association of the Palestinian Community is resurrecting. we have a dynamic ambassador and a dynamic embassy, but we should also have a dynamic and very sophisticated community. An embassy and an ambassador, Dr. Nihal, is a foreign agent, an external factor. You, the community, you are a domestic actor, and you will be differently heard, differently listened by all the other actors in society. And I personally believe today, with the reawakening of the association, you can engage with the sociological components of British society in a much more assertive manner. Now, ladies and gentlemen, diplomacy is the marketing department. The product back home has to be fresh, appealing, and appetizing. And those who know me, my close friends, know that my opinion for the last 25 years has been that we, the Palestinians, we do not yet have the authority we deserve better. Nor do we have the oppositions we need better oppositions. So there is room for improvement. And apparently Helmut Schmidt, Chancellor in Germany some 20 years ago, used to say, the biggest room on earth is the room for improvement. So I believe, ladies and gentlemen, we should aspire more. We should be more demanding from our political establishment, left, right, and center. And if not now, when are we going to achieve national unity? When? I don't know. So I personally believe we should not allow the appointment that all the factions have taken at the invitation of China for the 26th of this month in Beijing to pass unnoticed and in a routinish manner. We expect them and we should pressure them, and we rely on you as our spokesperson towards the political establishment that they go there with the intention of achieving an agreement and a consensus. And the challenge is the following. We Palestinians, we need to have a government that enjoys domestic legitimacy and international acceptability. Had we been more careful and more responsible in our behavior, domestic legitimacy by itself would have been sufficient. But we have not been very responsible in our behavior and attitude, etc. This is why I put the two prerequisites of domestic legitimacy and international acceptability. Now, in the past, they used to say, we seem to be condemned to either have unity, but a paralytic unity, or a clear strategy. I believe we should bypass this dichotomy. We can have unity and a strategy. And belonging proudly to Fateh, let me tell you of my exasperation often that we have been criticized, not always legitimately, for having discovered the limits of the possible 30 years before others. And I believe that we should have a genuine dialogue with great responsibility, showing political maturity and political statesmanship. What is statesmanship? What's the difference between statesman and a politician? A politician, Dr. Nihal, is a person who cannot resist the temptations of an immediate gain, even if it's at the detriment of a long-term acquisition. And the statesman is somebody who can disregard an immediate possible gain so as to obtain and to attain a long-term gain. I believe we need statesmanship, and we need to have a very sophisticated public opinion. I personally believe in the importance of public opinion. I never liked the word the Arab street, by the way, because it encourages our politicians to behave in a street-like manner. No, I would